Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are tearing down the illusion of middle-class security. You know that heavy feeling? The one where you're working 10, maybe 12 hours a day, doing absolutely everything right, but somehow your hard-earned salary just vanishes by the second day of the month. We've all been there. It feels like the gap between you and actual wealth is just getting wider every single day. Well, today, we're going to unpack exactly why that is happening, and much more importantly, how you can finally escape it.
So let's jump right into this. Are you living what experts call a well-dressed decline? Because on the surface, the modern middle class looks incredibly successful, right? We've got the upgraded smartphones, we take a nice vacation now and then, maybe even drive a pretty decent car. But that's exactly what a well-dressed decline is. Shiny and put together on the outside, but financially suffocating on the inside. Our salaries are barely creeping up, while the cost of just maintaining this basic lifestyle is absolutely exploding. It's forcing so many of us to rely on credit just to fund a completely normal life, not even a luxurious one.
And look, this pressure isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet. It is incredibly real, and sometimes it's deeply tragic. Take the heartbreaking story of Tarun Saxena from Jhansi. Here was a 42-year-old salaried guy, completely stable job in the private sector, but the crushing weight of middle-class expectations and absolute zero financial security became too much, and he actually took his own life. His final note to his parents just asked them to build a second floor on their house so his family could live comfortably. It's a really stark, painful reminder that having a job does not automatically mean you have financial security. To put the scale of this into perspective, just look at the raw data. Right now, the average Indian is buried under a staggering $480,000 of debt. And honestly, this next part is shocking. Nearly 40% of people are caught in this vicious loop where they're using one credit card literally just to pay off the minimum due on another credit card. They aren't actually clearing any debt at all. They're just shuffling it around and paying absolutely massive interest rates along the way. So, let's get into section 1, the middle class illusion. To understand how we got so trapped, we have to look at the harsh reality of systemic inequality. We're all taught that if you just work hard, you'll climb the ladder. But the ladder itself is changing. Think of it like this. Imagine a room with 100 people and exactly 100 chapatis. In a perfectly fair world, everybody gets one. But in our current reality, the top 1% of the population walks away with 40 chapatis all to themselves. That leaves the remaining 99 people, which, by the way, includes the entire middle class, to practically brawl over the remaining 60. The whole system actually relies on the middle class continuing to run on that hamster wheel just to keep their current spot. Moving on to section 2, the silent systemic risks. Everybody is terrified of a massive stock market crash, right? Because it's loud, it's on the news, it's everywhere. But the real threats, they're the silent risks. They don't make the evening news. They just quietly ensure that your salary stays flat while your everyday expenses multiply. For example, data shows that a decade ago, you could live a pretty comfortable middle-class life on about 5 lakhs a year. Today, that exact same lifestyle costs nearly 8.6 lakhs. So if your salary hasn't basically doubled in that time, you have technically become poorer. Add to that the hollowing out of jobs, where stable middle management roles are just vanishing, leaving only super high-paid executives or low-paid service gigs. Now, a massive piece of this puzzle is currency depreciation. Back in 2016, $1 US was worth about 66 rupees. Today, it's hovering right around 94 rupees. And you might be wondering, why does that matter to my daily life? Well, because we import crucial everyday things, crude oil, electronics, medical equipment. When the rupee weakens against the dollar, literally everything you buy that relies on those imports suddenly gets more expensive. It acts as this invisible tax that just silently eats away at your purchasing power. And speaking of sneaky taxes, have you noticed shrinkflation happening right in your grocery basket? Fast-moving consumer goods companies, they're smart. They know you're gonna notice if they bump up the price of your favorite snacks. So they just keep the price exactly the same, but quietly shrink the amount of food inside the package. A packet of Maggi dropped from 80 grams down to 55 grams. A pack of Parle G went from 140 grams to 110 grams. You're paying the exact same amount of money, but getting way less. On top of all those invisible drains, the salaried middle class carries a brutal, completely unavoidable tax burden. Income tax gets deducted right at the source. There is zero negotiating that. Then you're paying GST on literally everything, from butter to your kids' school fees. Plus property tax, fuel tax, toll tax. There's a lot of deep frustration here in the source material, and rightfully so. The middle class feels like they're carrying the heaviest financial load for the entire economy, but they rarely see equivalent returns in public infrastructure, like top-tier government schools or hospitals. Which brings us right to Section 3, the EMI debt cycle. Look, systemic issues are incredibly tough, no doubt, but we also have to take some accountability for our own behavioral traps. Driven largely by social media, we are constantly falling victim to lifestyle inflation. You know how it goes, you get a raise and immediately, almost reflexively, you upgrade your apartment or buy a new car on EMI or get the absolute newest iPhone. People are literally taking out loans for an $8,900 Stanley Cup or designer shoes just to project this image of wealth online. But taking on debt for depreciating assets, things that lose value the literal second you buy them, is a 100% guarantee that you will never build actual wealth. And get this, there's something experts jokingly called the bug pun syndrome. It references that cultural expectation where parents sacrifice everything for their kids but absolutely refuse to talk about money with them. Because of this cultural taboo around discussing finances, investments, or wills, there is currently over 1 lakh crore sitting in unclaimed deposits in Indian banks and mutual funds. Just let that number sink in. People are working their entire lives, they pass away, and their own families never even know the money existed. To break free from this whole matrix, we turn to Section 4, buckets versus pipes. We desperately need a mental model shift in how we view our labor and our money. And the absolute easiest way to think about it is buckets versus pipes. Most of us are walking around carrying buckets. We trade our limited time for monthly salary. We walk to the well, fill up our bucket, and carry it home. But the second we stop walking, the water stops flowing. The wealthy, on the other hand, spend their time building pipes. Pipes are assets. Investments, businesses, real estate that continuously flow and make money for them, literally while they are sleeping. Just think about our daily habits for a second. We are a nation of 1.4 billion consumers absolutely fueling the engines of massive global tech companies. We spend hours scrolling WhatsApp, we pay for Netflix subscriptions, we buy Apple products. We are willingly giving them our time and our money, making them richer every day. But we need to make a massive transition. We have to stop being just global consumers and start becoming global owners. We need to actually own a piece of the platforms we are using every single day. Which leads us to our final part. Section 5, your financial escape plan.
So how do we actually execute this? How do we go from bucket carrier to pipe builder and finally stop that well-dressed decline? Well, here is your foundational escape plan. First, you have to track where your money leaks. Those daily 200 rupees coffees? Yeah, they add up fast. Second, absolutely stop taking on EMIs for luxury items or depreciating assets. Cut it out completely. Third, build a safety net that covers at least 3 months of your basic living expenses. And finally, we have to end the Sabchanga Sai delusion, that mindset of, oh, everything is fine, nothing bad will ever happen to me. Get proper medical and term insurance today, because a single unforeseen medical emergency can literally wipe out a decade of your hard-earned savings.
Now, if you are already drowning in debt, you need a solid strategy to crush it. Strictly enforce the 30% rule for yourself. Your total EMI payments should never, ever exceed 30% of your income. And to pay off what you already owe, use one of 2 methods. There's the snowball method, where you clear out your smallest debts first just to build that psychological momentum and get a quick win, or use the avalanche method, where you attack the debt with the highest interest rate first, like those credit cards, which mathematically saves you the most money in the long run. And finally, start building your global pipe. Listen, you do not need to be a millionaire to start doing this. Using investment platforms mentioned in the sources, like Indie Money, for example, you can literally set up a small monthly SIP of just 500 rupees. Thanks to fractional investing, you can buy tiny, affordable pieces of the massive global companies you are already consuming every single day. Not only does this build your assets, but investing globally is one of the best ways to protect your wealth against that silent risk of a weakening rupee we talked about earlier. I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. The rules of the financial game have completely changed. The middle-class trap is incredibly real, but it is not inescapable. So what's it going to be? Are you going to keep playing on hard mode, constantly running on that treadmill just to stay in the exact same place? Or will you finally take ownership of your future, shift your entire mindset, and start building your own pipes? The choice is entirely yours. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.